The city of Lumeria had long been forgotten by the world. Once a thriving metropolis, its shining towers now stood cracked, stained with smoke and decay. Few people still called it home, and those who did whispered about the shadows lurking in the alleys. Crime ruled the streets where law had abandoned them. Among the ruins of hope, a new kind of legend was quietly forming. His name was Eric Vale. Eric was not extraordinary in the way people expected heroes to be. He wasn't born with powers, nor did he inherit wealth. He was the son of a mechanic, raised in a neighborhood where broken machines and broken dreams were equally common. His father, Silas Vale, was a kind man but weary of life. Silas often told Eric, "Machines can be fixed, son, but people are complicated." Eric believed him, until the night everything changed. That night, the sky split open above Lumeria. A storm unlike any other raged, carrying streaks of light that weren't lightning. People saw it as a sign, but Eric saw it as the beginning of something far stranger. While walking home through the rain, he stumbled upon a burning crater in an abandoned lot. In its center lay a glowing shard, pulsing with energy. Eric, against his better judgment, touched it. The shard didn't burn him, instead, it melted into his skin. His veins lit up with a silver glow before fading back to normal. He collapsed, gasping, unaware that his life had just been rewritten. The next morning, Eric felt different. His senses were sharper, his body lighter. He could hear conversations from streets away, smell smoke before it even rose into sight. When he leapt across a puddle, he realized he had jumped nearly 10 feet without effort. Confused, terrified, and exhilarated, he tested himself in secret. His body no longer obeyed the usual laws, it bent them. He could run faster, leap higher, and crush steel with his bare hands. But more than strength, he discovered something stranger: control over the air itself. With a single thought, he could bend the wind to his will. A gentle breeze followed him when he walked. If he concentrated, he could create gusts strong enough to knock doors off their hinges. This power both thrilled and frightened him. He told no one, not even his father. Instead, he spent nights experimenting, learning how to breathe with the wind and even become part of it. He called this new force within him ether. And though he didn't know it yet, the shard had chosen him for a reason. Lumeria was not only plagued by crime, it was watched by something darker. A syndicate known as the Black Coil controlled most of the city. Their leader, a man shrouded in mystery, was called Veyron. No one knew where Veyron came from, but rumors painted him as someone who had also touched the stars. His men moved through the city like shadows, enforcing his rule. They smuggled weapons, controlled trade, and silenced anyone who stood in their way. Even the police bent to their will. Eric had always avoided trouble with them, until one night, he couldn't. On his way home, Eric heard a scream from an alley. 3 Black Coil thugs were cornering a young woman. Without thinking, Eric stepped in. The thugs laughed until the air itself swirled, knocking them against the walls. They fired their guns, but the bullets slowed mid-air, drifting like feathers before falling harmlessly. Eric's heart pounded, his face hidden by shadows, as he struck them down with a forceful gust. The woman escaped, but rumors of a ghost of wind began to spread through the city. That night, Eric realized he had crossed a line. He wasn't just hiding his power anymore. He was using it. And for the first time, he wondered if he could be more than just a boy from the broken streets. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers grew. People claimed a protector was watching over them. A figure unseen, moving like air, punishing criminals in the night. Some called him a demon, others an angel. Eric called himself nothing, he was simply trying to do what felt right. But his actions did not go unnoticed by Veyron. The leader of the Black Coil despised anything that disrupted his grip. And so he began searching for the one they called the Wind Phantom. Meanwhile, Eric crafted a disguise. He sewed together pieces of leather and cloth, fashioning a mask to hide his face. He painted the mask silver, with streaks like flowing air. He gave himself a name, Etherian. It was the first step toward becoming the hero the city desperately needed. With each night, Etherian grew bolder. He struck drug shipments, dismantled smuggling routes, and freed captured workers. The people began to whisper hope again. For the first time in years, they dared to believe the city could be theirs again. But heroism came with a cost. Silas, his father, noticed Eric's strange absences and injuries. "You're keeping secrets, son," Silas said one evening. Eric wanted to tell him the truth, but fear held him back. What if his father couldn't accept it? What if the black coil hurt him because of it? So he remained silent, carrying the weight alone. Meanwhile, Veyron grew restless. He sent his most trusted enforcer, a woman known as Naira, to hunt Etherian. Naira was no ordinary foe. She was ruthless, skilled in combat, and rumored to possess enhancements of her own. The first clash between Etherian and Naira shook the rooftops of Lumeria. Eric struggled against her speed and precision. For every gust of wind he conjured, she countered with flawless strikes. Their battle ended in a stalemate, both retreating into the night. But Naira had seen his eyes, glowing faintly silver beneath the mask. She vowed to unmask him, no matter the cost. The fight haunted Eric. He realized he wasn't invincible. His power was vast, but his skill was unrefined. He needed to train, not just his body, but his mind. He sought out old martial arts manuals, studied physics, and learned strategy. Night after night, he honed himself into more than a boy with power. He became a warrior. Still, doubts gnawed at him. Was he truly helping the city, or just painting a larger target on its back? These questions followed him even in his dreams. One evening, Eric returned home to find his father waiting. Silas held the broken mask in his hands. "I know, Eric," he said softly. Eric's heart sank. But instead of anger, Silas showed pride. "You're fighting for what I never could. Just promise me one thing, don't lose yourself." Eric nodded, tears in his eyes. His father's words became his anchor in the storms ahead. The war between Etherian and the Black Coil escalated. Veyron finally revealed himself, a figure wrapped in dark armor with veins glowing red. He too had touched a shard long ago, but his had corrupted him. Instead of air, he controlled shadows, bending them into blades and beasts. He declared Etherian his rival, the one force that dared challenge him. Their first encounter was catastrophic. Shadows clashed with winds, tearing apart entire blocks. Dozens were injured, and Eric barely escaped with his life. The people saw the destruction and began to fear Etherian as much as they feared Veyron. It broke Eric's heart, but he refused to stop. He swore he would prove that hope was stronger than fear. Weeks turned into months. Naira continued hunting him, Veyron tightened his grip, and the people's faith wavered. Yet Etherian did not falter. He saved children trapped in fires, dismantled illegal weapon factories, and inspired small groups of citizens to resist. Slowly, hope flickered again. And with hope, came courage. Ordinary people began fighting back in small ways, refusing to pay the Coil's extortions, sheltering Etherian when he was wounded, spreading his symbol across the city walls. That symbol became a beacon, a silver swirl of wind, painted where eyes could see. Lumeria was rising, and Veyron knew it. The final confrontation was inevitable. Veyron unleashed his forces on the city, determined to crush hope once and for all. The streets turned into battlefields. Flames and shadows engulfed entire districts. Etherian stood at the heart of it, rallying the people to fight alongside him. For the first time, he wasn't alone. Silas worked with mechanics to build barricades. Citizens armed themselves with whatever they could find. And Etherian, soaring through the winds, became the storm that guided them. His powers had grown, he could now summon whirlwinds, shield others in domes of air, and even ride the skies like a falcon. Veyron met him at the city's tallest tower. Their battle was thunder itself, wind against shadow, hope against despair. Nyra too stood in the fight, torn between loyalty and what she had come to see in Etherian's resolve. In the end, she chose to aid him, striking against Veyron at the decisive moment. Eric channeled every ounce of his power, calling upon the very essence of the shard within him. With a final roar, the winds howled, tearing the shadows apart and scattering Veyron into nothingness. Silence followed. The city looked upon its savior, battered but unbroken. Etherian stood tall, mask cracked, but his spirit shining. He didn't declare victory. Instead, he said only, "This city belongs to its people. Protect it." And then he vanished into the skies. In the months that followed, Lumeria began to heal. The black coil dissolved without its leader. Citizens rebuilt, guided by the symbol of the silver swirl. Crime did not vanish, but hope endured. They whispered of their guardian who still watched them from above. Eric Vale returned to a quieter life by day, but by night he remained Etherian. His battle was far from over. Other forces, drawn by the shards, would one day come. But when they did, the winds would rise again. For Lumeria had its hero now. And his story was only beginning. Yet in the deepest corners of the earth, the fragments of Veyron's shadow stirred. Darkness never dies easily. Eric knew this truth well. Every night he trained harder, not for glory, but for survival. He could not rest knowing threats would return. Nyra, now redeemed, chose to fight by his side, no longer an enemy but an ally. Together, they watched the city rebuild, defending it in silence. Silas, though aged and frail, found peace knowing his son had become more than he ever dreamed. And so, the legend of Etherian grew. Children drew his symbol in chalk on the streets. Merchants whispered his name as protection against thieves. Songs were sung of the wind phantom who fought the shadows. And in every heart that dared to hope, Etherian lived. Eric still doubted himself sometimes. He wondered if he could truly carry the weight of a city. But whenever he closed his eyes, he heard his father's words, "Don't lose yourself." And he remembered that heroes were not defined by power, but by choice. He had chosen to stand when others fell. He had chosen to fight when others fled. And that choice made him more than human. It made him a symbol. The symbol of the storm. The guardian of Lumeria. The eternal wind that whispers, "Rise again." In time, whispers came of other shards falling across the world. Some spoke of fire wielders in distant lands. Others mentioned warriors who could bend stone. Etherian listened carefully, knowing these were not coincidences. The shards were connected, pieces of something greater. And if one had corrupted Veyron, others could do the same. His fight was far from finished, it had only expanded. He stood atop the highest tower, feeling the winds carry his thoughts. "If there are others," he whispered, "I will find them. Or they will find me." Nyra stepped beside him. "Do you think you can face what's coming?" she asked. Eric smiled faintly beneath the broken mask. "The wind never stops. Neither will I." And so, the city slept under the watchful gaze of its hero. But far away, in a land untouched by Lumeria's struggle, a new shard fell from the heavens. The cycle began again. For every shadow, a wind must rise. For every despair, a hope must answer. And for every story of loss, there must be a hero to carry it forward. Eric Vale was no longer just a boy from the ruins. He was no longer just Etherian. He was the breath of tomorrow, the unseen promise in the storm. And his tale was etched in the skies. The people of Lumeria would pass his story down through generations. They would tell of the night the sky split open. They would tell of the boy who touched a shard and became more than himself. They would tell of the war against shadows, the rise of the silver wind, and the fall of Veyron. And they would remind their children, as long as the wind blows, we are not alone. Eric lived with these whispers. He carried them as both a burden and a gift. A reminder that he was not just fighting for survival, but for every soul who believed. He watched the sunrise each morning, breathing with the city. He knew storms would come again, darker than before. But he was ready. Because the storm was not his enemy. It was his ally. It was who he was. One night, as he patrolled the rooftops, Eric paused. He felt a familiar energy in the wind, a new shard had landed nearby. His heart quickened, knowing this meant new trials ahead. He whispered to himself, the story isn't over. It's only the next chapter. And he leapt into the night, the wind carrying him forward. Below, the city breathed. Above, the stars shimmered with secrets yet untold. And in between, a lone figure soared, the embodiment of hope. Etherian was not finished. He would never be finished. For as long as injustice existed, he would fight. For as long as shadows lingered, he would rise. For as long as people dared to dream, he would guard them. He was the whisper in the storm. The gale against the darkness. The guardian of the forgotten city. The protector of the broken and the brave. And the eternal wind of tomorrow. His mask may crack, his body may bleed, his soul may falter, but his spirit would never die. Because heroes are not made by shards. They are made by choice. And Eric Vale had already chosen. The winds howled that night, carrying his promise across the rooftops. A promise that no matter how dark the world became, there would always be one who stood. One who rose. One who fought. And his name was Etherian.